Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA predictions for Strikeforce Overeem versus Werdum. As you can see, I'm still wearing the black and gold, and right now the Stanley Cup Finals is tied at 2 after the Bruins rallied back for 2 big wins at home. Now, UFC 131 hasn't happened yet, but the Ultimate Fighter 13 finale went down last week, and between the Ultimate Fighter semifinals, the prelims, and the main card, I went 7-2 overall, which is pretty stellar. Now, my record predicting Strikeforce fights has been anything but stellar, sitting at 9-9, so I will need a good performance on this show to avoid dipping below the 500 mark. Now, this event will take place on June 18th, live from Dallas, Texas. I'll be predicting 5 fights, including the 2 tournament bouts. Quickly looking at the Grand Prix brackets, Fedor was eliminated by Antonio Silva, who is now awaiting the winner of Overeem Werdum, and Sergey Karatanov knocked out Andrei Arlovsky, getting him ready for a semifinal meeting with the winner of Barnett Rogers. We also have a number 1 contenders bout for the lightweight strap that I was planning on predicting before it got bumped to the main card. In fact, I was baffled that this fight was on the prelims, televised on HDNet or not. This is a fight that we should see on the main card. We also have 2 tournament reserve bouts, and before we get to the picks, I would like to give a shout out to Shane Del Rosario, as he was in a serious car accident and as a result was pulled from this card. I hope first that Shane can get himself healthy for life's sake, and then if able to continue, get his career back on track. So now, let's get going. It's time for the first prediction. We start off in the heavyweight division for a tournament reserve bout between 29-25 Valentin the Python Overeem and 10-1 Chad Gravedigger Griggs. Griggs has won back-to-back fights over much-hyped Strikeforce heavyweight prospects and is currently riding a 5-fight winning streak. Overeem has won 3 in a row, including submitting Ray Seppo in his previous bout. For betting purposes, I would have Overeem as the favorite, around $1.50, and Griggs at $2.25. Now, Griggs is the underdog, but he filled that role nicely in his last 2 outings with significant upsets in both. But having looked down the list of his opponents, I would say that Valentin presents his biggest challenge to date. What Griggs does in the cage is not pretty, but so far has proven incredibly effective. He is primarily a brawler with 9 career knockouts. Against Lashley, he was thoroughly dominated for the better part of the opening round, but when Lashley gasped, Griggs unloaded with some powerful hammer fists, causing a stop to the fight. In his next bout, I predicted a defeat versus Gian Valente, but Griggs, seemingly buoyed by confidence gained from the previous outing, smashed Valente and eventually stopped him. Devoid of much technique, Griggs has power along with a significant wind-up behind his punches. Against Valente, it was a you hit me, I'll hit you, and let's see who's still standing type of fight. I would expect that Griggs' power will be his key to success in this bout, as his opponent has been susceptible to knockouts in the past. Statistically, Overeem will have a significant experience advantage with more than 5 times the number of fights. Overeem is a Dutch Muay Thai striker with 11 career knockouts who trains alongside his brother, Alistair, at Golden Glory. He has solid leg strikes, scoring an impressive head kick knockout in one of his last outings. Now, both fighters have solid power, but I would give the edge to Overeem as he is the better technical striker. If this fight hits the mat, I would expect it to be the result of a Valentin takedown. Griggs will use takedowns, but primarily for ground and pound. He has been submitted once in his career and technically holds 1 submission win via punches. In his last bout with Lashley, Chad was continually taken down and really struggled to get up. He did his best to control his opponent from the bottom and did some damage, but had Lashley been more experienced and less gassed, the dominant positions he was able to obtain would have led to a victory. Overeem showed in his last bout against Ray Seppo that he has no qualms about taking his adversary to the mat, especially if he is a superior grappler. After a brief exchange, Valentin put Seppo on his back and quickly submitted him with a neck crank. Overeem has 17 career submissions, and based on his last outing, I would believe Overeem will recognize where his greatest advantage is and look to exploit it. Chad Griggs has earned 2 surprising victories in Strikeforce and could make it 3 in a row with a win here. But comparing the areas where each fighter could earn a victory, I see too many opportunities for Overeem and too few for Griggs. Griggs will need to turn the fight into a brawl and catch Valentin early on, but Overeem's superior striking technique and 3-inch reach advantage could prevent this, as could a successful takedown by the Dutchman. For Overeem, he could very well catch Gravedigger with his own strikes, maybe a head kick, or he could take the fight to the mat and submit him there. Both fighters are aggressive starters. Overeem has never gone beyond the end of the 2nd round, and Griggs has never fought a full 3 rounds. So I'm going to call this one over by the midway mark of the 2nd round, probably even earlier than that, and I'll take Valentin Overeem to submit Chad Griggs. Our second tournament reserve bout will feature undefeated 7-0 Daniel Cormier taking on the Snowman Jeff Monson, 42-11. Cormier has won all 4 of his Strikeforce fights, while Monson has won 8 in a row. Monson got the call for this bout to replace Shane Del Rosario after Shane was injured in a car accident, as I already mentioned, and we again wish a speedy recovery for Shane. For the betting purposes, I would have this fight fairly tight. There are arguments for both fighters being the favorite, but I'll call it even at $1.85 each. Both of these fighters have noteworthy grappling pedigrees. Monson is a former NCAA Division I wrestler and a BJJ black belt with an impressive 26-2 MMA submission record. Cormier doesn't have the extensive MMA credentials possessed by his opponent, but he's a former Olympic wrestler and highly decorated amateur competitor that has made a successful transition to MMA. There is no doubt that this fight is going to hit the ground at some point. The big question is who's going to dominate there. One key to figuring this out could be how these two match up physically. On most nights, Cormier is the smaller of the two men in the cage. So far, his opponents have averaged 6'3", but Cormier's talent has overcome these physical disparities. For this fight, Cormier will actually be taller, standing 5'11" to Monson's 5'9". And based on the statistics, I have seen he will be the heavier of the two fighters, so he won't have to deal with being undersized in this bout. Now, Monson will work extremely hard for takedowns, usually trying to grab a single and drive his opponent to the mat. When he gets there, he is heavy on top with excellent control and solid ground and pound. He will quickly transition to side control, pinning his adversary on the mat, neutralizing one arm while attacking the other. Transitioning from this position, he has scored a number of wins via choke, either from the north-south position or taking an opponent's back. Now, even though Cormier has 3 submissions on record, only one was a true submission, as the other 2 came as a result of punches. Cormier, too, is incredibly aggressive when searching for a takedown. Against Devin Cole, he executed a very nice lateral drop to put Cole on his back, and when Daniel gets on top, he is difficult to get off. He is quite active, constantly working to improve his position, all the while beating up his opponent. Especially in his last outing, his grappling skills will simply wear out his opponent. My biggest concern with Cormier is that he's never spent a lot of time on his back, and Monson certainly has the skills to accomplish this. If this happens, we could see a significant hole in Cormier's game. Now, if the fight stays standing, I give a significant edge to Cormier. Working at AKA, he has quickly taken to the striking aspects of MMA. He has a powerful right hand and will use a jab, sometimes doubling it up and falling quickly behind with a clinch and takedown. His kicks are dangerous. He has very heavy leg strikes both inside and out and isn't afraid to mix it up with a push kick. For Monson, his stand-up is serviceable, but it appears as he gets on in age, his focus is now on setting up his takedowns and avoiding striking exchanges. Against Pedro Rizzo, Monson seemed to have issues with Pedro's leg kicks, and with Cormier's improving leg strikes, this could be a big part of this fight. This fight presents the biggest challenge in Cormier's young MMA career, while Monson has been competing against lesser opponents looking for his opportunity to return to the big stage. If Cormier uses his wrestling to keep the fight standing, he will have an advantage on the feet. On the mat, Monson is one of the best, but I think Cormier's mat game will wear out the snowman. Jeff Monson has been hard to finish over his career, so my prediction is Daniel Cormier to grind out a decision victory. In the lightweight division, 9-2 KJ Nunes will take on 21-6 Jorge Gamebred Masvidal. In what is being touted as a #1 contenders bout for Gilbert Melendez's lightweight strap. Masvidal is coming off a victory over Billy Evangelista, while Nunes is looking to rebound from a defeat at the hands of the welterweight champion Nick Diaz. On the books, I have KJ as the favorite, around $1.55, and Masvidal at $2.25. Breaking this fight down statistically, one will expect that a great deal of the action is going to take place on the feet. Whether that is actually the case or not is another thing altogether. Both fighters have scored their ample share of knockouts. Nunes has 8 and Masvidal 10, while both have only been knocked out once. Nunes has gone toe-to-toe with Nick Diaz twice, winning the first via doctor stoppage and losing a 5-round slugfest the second time around. In that fight, Nunes showcased the striking skills that he is known for. KJ is an excellent counter-striker using an uppercut in combination with devastating hooks. He throws a nice jab and will attack the body with vicious punches. He will use leg kicks, nothing overly flashy, but when there is a threat of a takedown, leg strikes from Nunes become almost non-existent. KJ is a talented striker, but that's not to say his game doesn't have holes. He has a tendency to rely too much on his boxing, making him one-dimensional and easy to anticipate. Further, despite his smooth footwork, he can be caught standing directly in front of his opponent, making him much easier to hit. Finally, the reach issue that he encountered with Diaz can create a problem. If Nunes is unable to get inside of his opponent's strikes, he will lunge with his punches, which leaves him open to be countered. Jorge Masvidal, although the lesser known of the two fighters, has far more experience to draw upon than KJ and also possesses some solid striking skills. Jorge uses combinations along with his superior reach and a snappy left jab to keep his opponents on the outside. He will also counter-strike, although not quite as effectively as KJ. Even though Nunes is better known for his striking, I don't think the disparity will be that great and might not even exist. One thing Masvidal does better than Nunes is vary his attack. He will kick, use knee strikes, and work his opponent against the cage, which gives his adversary more to think about. His defense is solid, circling away to avoid his opponent and then resetting nicely. Against Paul Daly, Masvidal did an excellent job avoiding taking damage and showed impressive head movement in his last Strikeforce bout. On the mat, Nunes is at a disadvantage. Against Conor Hune, he got taken down several times and was for the most part controlled. This could be the deciding factor, as we have seen the importance of takedowns when it comes to fights that go the distance. When Jorge took on Daly, he recognized and exploited Daly's struggles by continually putting the Brit on his back by grabbing a single and completing the takedown. The much bigger Daly was able to get off his back, which kept Masvidal from a victory, but a similar strategy in this fight could be successful. In my estimation, the striking battle could go either way, and the struggles that Nunes has had in the past with reach could indicate that Jorge could get the better of the exchanges, as he will have a 4-inch reach advantage on KJ. If Masvidal mixes in takedowns, he will take Nunes out of his comfort zone by putting him on his back, and in past fights, the threat of a takedown seemed to affect Nunes' striking skills. So my prediction is Jorge Masvidal to upset KJ Nunes by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, and our first of 2 Grand Prix quarterfinal matchups, it will pit Brett the Grim Rogers, 11-2, against the babyface assassin Josh Barnett, 26-5. The winner of this bout will advance to the semifinals against Sergey Kharitonov. Rogers rebounded in his last fight with a controversial victory over Ruben Villarreal, while Barnett has won 6 in a row but has been inactive for almost a year. I have Barnett as the heavy favorite at $1.20 and Rogers as the dog at $3.35. Now, each fighter will enter this fight with a distinctive game plan. Rogers will be looking to keep this fight standing, while Josh's focus will be on taking Brett down. Looking at Rogers first, he has scored impressive knockout victories over Obongo Humphreys, James Thompson, and most notably Andrei Arlovsky. He has big power in his hands, which has led to his 10 career knockouts, 8 in the first round and the remaining 2 early in the second. Against Arlovsky, Grim unloaded with a series of powerful straight punches that quickly ended his opponent's night. Against Humphreys, he utilized the tie clinch along with knees and uppercuts. He will work in some leg kicks, but for the most part will rely on his hands to do his damage. If he is unable to score the early knockout, he will use the cage and his weight to grind down his opponent and will even use the odd takedown along with ground and pound. Despite his early success, Rogers' last 3 appearances have been anything but stellar. He held his own against Fedor before being knocked out. In his fight with Overeem, we saw Rogers manhandled and beat down by the champion, but it wasn't until his last outing that he really hit rock bottom. Against Ruben Villarreal, a sub-500 fighter, Rogers won the first round, gassed in the second, narrowly winning that frame and getting beaten up in the third, eventually winning a disputable decision. This was the first time Rogers had fought into the third round, and it was evident that the continual grind of grappling took a lot out of the big man, forcing him to look for takedowns, followed by ref stand-ups, where he was almost unable to get back to his feet as a result of fatigue. Now, Josh Barnett will be looking to implement just that type of strategy. Josh Barnett is a BJJ black belt with significant wrestling skills. He holds 17 career submission wins and has stopped a number of opponents via ground and pound. His ability to take an opponent to the mat and almost instantaneously move to side control and then full mount is impressive. To achieve the takedown, he will shoot for a single or use a body lock, and when Barnett gets his hands clasped around his opponent, they are going for a ride. Against Gilbert Yvel, he was able to put Yvel on his back, mount him, and keep him there. His ground and pound is devastating. He slowly ramps up the intensity until his opponent becomes overwhelmed and either goes out or taps to strikes. If he can't pound an opponent out, he has secured a number of submissions and seems to favor an armbar or Cormier with a few rear naked chokes mixed in. His striking is respectable. He knocked out Pedro Hizzo with a left hook, and he will mix in a number of different kicks. He has surprisingly good head movement, which helps him to avoid his opponent's strikes, but against both Yvel and Mighty Mo, Barnett did get tagged a few times. With Rogers' reach advantage and punching power, all it might take is one big punch to end Barnett's night. This is Brett's best opportunity to win this fight, and he will have to do it early. Barnett might exchange with Brett briefly, but I would expect Josh will either duck under Rogers' right or clinch and back him into the cage. If Rogers is unable to land a big strike early on, look for Barnett to put him on his back and grind him down. Based on his last fight, Rogers' endurance is not built to endure long periods of grappling, and when Overeem put Rogers on the ground, he was quickly overwhelmed. Barnett is capable of locking in a submission, but I would expect him to play it safe and avoid submission attempts that could result in a reversal. So my prediction is Josh Barnett to advance to the second round of the tournament by defeating Brett Rogers via stoppage. In the main event of the evening, Strikeforce heavyweight champion Alistair the Demolition Man Overeem 34-11-1 will take on Fabricio Werdum 14-4-1 in the final tournament quarterfinal matchup. Overeem has won 6 in a row and hasn't lost in his last 10 outings, while Werdum has won 3 in a row and 5 of his last 6. I have Overeem as the favorite at $1.20 and Werdum the dog at $3.05. This will be their second meeting as they battled back in 06 while in Pride. Having rewatched that matchup, I would have given the edge to Overeem until he was submitted via Kimura. Now, Werdum's primary method of winning a fight is his submission game. He has 8 submissions so far and has compiled a nice list of names in that category, including Overeem, Fedor, and Alex Emelianenko, and Mike Kyle. He's a BJJ black belt, and as he demonstrated against Fedor, is incredibly dangerous when the fight hits the mat. In his first meeting with Overeem, Werdum was getting the worst of the stand-up, but Alistair continually flirted with danger by taking the Brazilian down. When the fight hit the ground, Werdum used a closed guard to neutralize Overeem's top game and prevent him from doing too much damage. It took a number of times, but eventually Werdum was able to grab hold of Overeem's arm and tap him from the guard, which isn't an easy thing to do. Against Fedor, he fell to his back after taking a shot, and after a brief scramble was able to lock in a combination triangle armbar. Against Antonio Silva, Werdum struggled in the opening round, but was able to rebound nicely and win the fight based on a dominant performance on the mat. The moral of this story is avoid going to the ground at all times with Werdum, and if you do, you better not give him an opening. If Overeem can keep the fight standing, he will have a market advantage. Werdum was knocked out by Junior Dos Santos and has shown some vulnerability on the feet. Against Antonio Silva, he got tagged early and was losing the striking battle until Silva tired. Now, there is no doubt if the fight remains standing, who will have the edge. Werdum has been training his Muay Thai, but Overeem has 14 career knockouts and is the 2010 K1 World Grand Prix champion, so there isn't really much of a comparison. His last 4 knockouts have all come inside the first round, including manhandling young heavyweight prospect Todd Duffy and stopping with knees and punches. Overeem's striking is lethal. He has fast and heavy hands, vicious kicks, and dirty knees that can end a fight when they land. Because of his upper body strength, he is able to dictate the pace, and on the feet, he has demonstrated this when he simply tossed Brett Rogers aside in their fight. If Overeem elects to take the fight down, he has heavy ground and pound and has 19 submission victories, including 8 with that nasty guillotine. But again, Alistair would be wise to avoid the ground game, and I would expect he would have learned from their original bout and having watched Werdum submit Fedor. Another interesting point that should be noted from their first fight is that Overeem was not nearly as physically imposing, nor was he the striker that he is today. In my opinion, Alistair has become a more complete fighter since their first meeting, while Werdum has improved his striking, but he hasn't made the strides that Overeem has. Werdum has had issues with strikers in the past. The knockout against JDS, and he also got a decision by Andrei Arlovsky. Of the 2 fighters, Fabricio has probably fought the better competition of late, but I like what Overeem has done in the cage. He has been the more dominant of the 2 fighters, and I think looked better in their first meeting and just made a mistake. Werdum has been tagged in some of his recent fights, and if Overeem hits him clean, he might not be able to rebound. Look for the Brazilian to try and pull guard and get the fight to the ground quickly, while Overeem will look to exchange and create separation. If he does rock Werdum, he will need to be careful that he isn't playing possum and looking for a submission. I think that Overeem's size will be too big, too much for Werdum to control, and his striking will create too many problems. So my prediction is Alistair Overeem to defeat Fabricio Werdum by stoppage and advance to face Antonio Silva in the semifinals. Alright, welcome back to Kamikaze Countdown. The first thing I want to touch upon is this is a tournament edition show, the Strikeforce Heavyweight Grand Prix, and I'm curious if the UFC were to endeavor into holding a Grand Prix of their own tournament, what division? I'd like to see the welterweight division or middleweight divisions have a tournament so that we could see create a big-time champion or a big-time tournament winner who would take on the champion if it's Silva or GSP at the time, should they still be the champs. What I'm asking you guys, if you guys wouldn't mind or if you're interested, throw down what division you would like to see, maybe a combined tournament involving Strikeforce and UFC fighters. Throw down what division in the comment box that you'd like to see, and maybe give me the top 16 fighters in the matchups you put together in the first round. I think that'd be an interesting exercise. Secondly, one thing I've kind of, having done the show and looked at Strikeforce, I almost wonder if it wouldn't be a benefit for the UFC to leave these 2 separate. I know Nick Diaz is crossing over. I kind of like what Strikeforce is putting together. Now that they're putting some cards together in advance, we know Luke Rockhold is going to take on Jacare in a couple of months for the middleweight title. Very interesting what they can put together. They start building up the divisions, add a little bit of depth with Zuffa backing them with money in the pocket. We'll see where they go from there. And finally, a sad note, again, it appears New York has vetoed the possibility of MMA being legalized in that state. Hopefully it'll get done eventually, but it doesn't appear it's going to happen anytime soon. All we can do is sit back and wait and enjoy what we have right now. Thanks for checking out Kamikaze Countdown. So you can check out the odds and payouts on my KO betting card. Please feel free to comment on all the aspects of the show you've seen here. I've done some updating, my Strikeforce rankings, and again, let me know what you think of those. We still have 2 more big events on the horizon, UFC on Versus next weekend, followed by UFC 132 the weekend after that. So again, thank you for watching, and I hope in my next video I'll be celebrating a Boston Bruins Stanley Cup victory. You really have to love the intensity of the series, and Tim Thomas leading the way. Go Bruins, go, and I'm out of here.